Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Extra Innings Podcast, where today we'll be continuing the series we have started almost 10 episodes ago, and that will be going through all 30 teams and going over their 2020 offseason moves and deciding whether they improve their team or not. Today, we're going to continue the trend and go with the Detroit Tigers. In 2019, they were just god-awful, abysmal, any synonym for those words. They were 47 and 114. They were 22 and 59 at home. They were 25 and 55 on the road. They were last in the AL Central. Their team honestly consisted of a bunch of AAA players. And, they had guys like Miguel Cabrera, Jacoby Jones, Michael Fulmer, and Matthew Boyd. But that's really it when it comes to major league caliber players. Maybe Nico Goodrum on his good days, but this team is really abysmal, and we'll see what they did in 2020 offseason, see if they addressed, anything they address is a positive at this point. I mean, you bring in guys, it's a positive. You bring in guys who can, are MLB players, not all AAA players, not minor league players. It's a positive, so it's automatically going to improve your team going into 2020, whether these guys are 35 plus or just serviceable players who could be below average on a winning team, but on a team like this, they're going to be, star players who are going to put up numbers that you wouldn't expect to see on a winning team if they were to play there. So we're going to start with some arbitration moves. They did sign Michael Fulmer and Matthew Boyd to avoid arbitration. We're going to start with Michael Fulmer because I believe that he is the more not interesting, but could have a really, really good career. But once again, in 2019, I have no stats for him because he did not pitch. He underwent Tommy John surgery in 2019. So I'm going to give you his stats from 2018, which is his most recent season. Remember, he won Rookie of the Year in 2016. He was 10th in the Cy Young voting that year. He was an All-Star in 2017. And in 2018, he had a little rough patch. He went 3-12 with a 4.69 ERA in 132 and 1/3 innings pitched. His strikeouts were a little down at 110. But if you look at his career stats, he's pitching to a 3.81 ERA. You want that to get down to a sub 3.5. He has 356 strikeouts in 456 innings. You want that to be a little higher. You want him to have around a 7.58 strikeouts per nine, but his whip is very, very solid, a 1.18, 1.19, depending on what website you're looking at. He's a 9.7 win player in 3 seasons. I think that's something that you have to look at. He's not making a lot of money, hovering around, the league minimum $575. Now it's probably around $600,000. This guy, if he can bounce back, you never know how someone's gonna react to coming back from a Tommy John surgery because you're not pitching for 10 to 12 months, then you have the whole rehab, and then it takes around a good 12 to 14 months, 14 to 16 months to come back from a Tommy John surgery because you can come back even better than you did, or you can come back and never be the same pitcher. Michael Fulmer can step on that mound and never be an all-star pitcher like he was in 2017, or he can come back and be that 2017 all-star, be that 2016 Rookie of the Year, pitching to a 3.06 ERA and a 3.83 ERA respectively. Keeping that whip to a minimum of 1.1. His whip overall is something that is very consistent. In 2016, a 1.11, in 2017, a 1.15, and then in 2018, his down year, even in a down year, a 1.31 whip is not bad. Even in a down year, just his ERA needs to drop from a 4.69 in 2018 to at least a sub 3.5 if you want to be consistent. I know Comerica, it's not the easiest park to pitch in because the walls are short, balls kind of fly out of there. But that center field is huge, Comerica Park, I don't know if it's hitter friendly or pitcher friendly. You can go, but I can hear the argument both ways. But I would consider it slightly hitter friendly. While he's not going to give up. He does give up actually a large amount of home runs, 19 in 2018. But in Comerica in general, pitchers aren't going to give up maybe so many home runs, but they'll give up a lot of doubles because of how that right center field wall caves out. So it's a tough park to pitch in. Michael Fulmer, if the 1 year arbitration, I think the delay to 2020 might have helped him because once we do play in 2020, if we do play, he probably will be back from Tommy John, and he'll probably get at least 5 to 10 starts. He'll probably be on an innings limit. I wouldn't if we're playing around 60 games in 2020. I don't see him getting more than 50 innings in 5 to 10 starts. I really don't see him going more than. I don't see him really getting. Maybe he gets 1 to 2 quality starts this season, but I just think if we're playing only 60 games or whatever it's going to be, I think his innings limit will be around 50, 60 innings. So it'll be interesting to see how Michael Fulmer bounces back. I believe that he can bounce back, but you never know. You can't predict how someone's going to bounce back from Tommy John because it is one of the most strenuous rehabs and one of the hardest surgeries and injuries in all sports to come back from. It's up there with ACL tears and MCL tears. So next we're going to talk about Matthew Boyd, who did pitch in 2019. He was 9-12 with a 4.56 ERA with 238 strikeouts in 185 and a third innings pitched. Now, Matthew Boyd, obviously, that's going to be just a career high in strikeouts. He 238 and 185 innings pitched. That's an 11.6 strikeout per nine. If he just has to bring his ERA down. Career ERA, it's hovering close to a 5, a 4.92. If he can bring that ERA down, he could be an all-star pitcher. He is entering his age 29 season. He's been in the league for 5 years already. He started in Toronto, came to Detroit, and he has found a little bit of success in Detroit compared to his half a season in Toronto in 2015. But if you look at his overall numbers, he keeps his whip around a 1-1, a 1-2. He had a rough year in 2015, but that's way back when. He's apparently a crazy strikeout pitcher. He did strike out 159 batters in 2018 in 170 innings, so it came out to an 8.4 strikeouts per nine. But to have an 11.6 strikeouts per nine, the guy was just striking out batter after batter. He struck out averaging 11.6 strikeouts per nine. It's absolutely unreal. He did give up, on the other hand, 39 home runs in 2019. That is a career high for him. That is absolutely absurd. Giving up 40 home runs in 32 starts. That's over. It's almost 2 home runs a start. That can't happen. He's got to dial back that. He's got to bring down the walks just a little bit to probably sub 40 walks. If he wants to get over 200 innings pitched, he has to keep the walks to under 50, keep the home runs to under 15, 20. Keep the strikeouts around there too. You don't expect to strike out 240 batters a year, but if you can strike out over 200, that's phenomenal. Bring that ERA down. Again, same thing as Fulmer. I preach this. If a pitcher can pitch under a sub 3.5, he is a very upper echelon pitcher in this league. If you could pitch under a 3, you're really up there, and if you can pitch under a 2.5, you're elite. But if you can pitch under a 3.5 consistently over 200 innings, you're there when it comes to pitching, and I believe in that. Some people believe you could pitch under a 3, but pitching under a 3 sometimes is difficult because if you have 2 rough starts here and there, your ERA skyrockets, and it's tough to bring that down. So, a checklist for Matthew Boyd in 2020 ERA. It's since he's at a 4.56, just bring it down to a sub 4. To get a whole 1 ERA decrease in 1 year is difficult. So bring it down to a sub 4. Bring the home runs down to at least under 25. Keep the strikeouts to over 200 and keep progressing. And when he hits his prime, which is going to be in the next year or two, that's it. He's going to be there, So, the starting pitching in Detroit is iffy, to say the least. We're going to talk about more stuff that they did. Nothing to do with starting pitching. They did re-sign their one bright spot in this lineup, in this team, Jacoby Jones, to avoid arbitration. Jacoby Jones in 2019 hit .235 with a .310 on base, a .430 slugging, a .740 OPS with 11 home runs, 26 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. By bright spot, I mean he could be the one player that can actually break out. He's only entering his 28th season. In 2019, I just read you his stats. He looks phenomenal. He is a good fielder out there as well. In 4 seasons, he has 13 defensive runs saved, and he just looks, if you look at him out there, he looks good out there defensively. This year was a little bit of a down year compared to his 2018 defensive season, but in 2019, he makes the plays. He robs home runs from time to time. He looks comfortable. He patrols center field really well. There were a couple times where he line drives tend to be a little bit of a struggle for him. He'll either move in on the ball when it's over his head or take a step back, which is actually what you're taught to do even as a high schooler. Take that step back and then reevaluate where you need to go, because if you take that step forward and it's over your head, the ball already beat you. So if you take a step back, you rather the ball drop in front of you than behind you. So you give up a single instead of a double or a triple. Jacoby Jones sometimes takes that step forward and then gets caught backtracking and can't catch up the ball, but it's a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen all the time. But what he needs to do, a checklist for 2020, bring that batting average to above 250. In more plate appearances, he only had 298 at bats, right? So if he can get around 400 plate appearances in a season, I'm assuming his home runs are going to go up to around 20 home runs. His RBIs will obviously increase to around 50, 60. Stolen bases, he's quick. He can steal more than 7 bases per year. So I expect him to steal around 15 to 20 stolen bases as well. So this is my personal bright spot that the Tigers do have. It's either him or Nico Goodrum, who can actually break out and become a star for them, because trust me, more than anything, they need it. So I do like the Jacoby Jones signing. I think if he plays well in 2020 or 2021, depending on how it is, you keep him for long term. You lock him up, because this could be your franchise center fielder for the future. So next, it's 3 signings that they did. They're not major signings, but they are signings that will be day one starters and automatically help their team. So they signed catcher Austin Romine from the New York Yankees. In 2019, he hit 281 with a 310 on base, a 439 slugging, a 748 OPS with 8 home runs and 35 RBIs. In 228 plate appearances, he was sharing the catching duties in New York. If you look at those stats just in the small plate appearance that he had, that's really solid numbers. To hit 280 as a catcher is phenomenal. He does his job behind the plate. I don't want to say he's the best defensive catcher I've ever seen, because trust me, he's not. He actually has a -3 defensive runs saved. But he's a good plate caller, I would say. A game caller. He can play pitches from here and there. He's not this phenomenal catcher. He's probably middle of the pack when it comes to catchers. He is entering his age 31 season, so that is something to look at. In spring training, I just bring this up because it's his first game action with the Tigers. He hit 250 in 19 plate appearances and 16 at-bats. He walked 3 times, struck out once. He had 1 double, no home runs, and 1 RBI. The only reason I say this is I just want to show you when it's a player's first action with a new team, I like to bring up their 2020 spring training. We have simulated stats that Baseball Reference gives us. So through April 24th, they project him to be hitting 280 with 2 home runs, 4 doubles, with a 368 on base, a 480 slugging, and an 848 OPS. So if this was true, then this is great numbers for him. To keep that average around 280 is really what you really want out of him. And it's going to be their day one starting catcher, and it's an improvement. Trust me, over who they had beforehand. It's definitely an improvement. Like I said, anything's an improvement over what they had. In 2019, you had Grayson Grainer and Eric Haas. So definitely an improvement. Austin Romine, yes, his numbers could have been inflated in 2019 due to where he plays in Yankee Stadium. In my opinion, the biggest hitter-friendly ballpark in all of baseball. So I think, guys like Judge, yeah, he hits 500-foot home runs, but Judge, Stan, Gleyber Torres, pretty much anyone in the Yankees, I think it's not as bad as Coors, but I think numbers have to be looked at as inflated when it comes to Yankees hitters, and I will talk about that when we get to the New York Yankees. So that's my personal take. I think it's a good signing. I don't think it's going to be this under the radar, diamond in the rough signing. He's already 31 years old, but they need him. They need anybody at this point. Next, they signed Jonathan Scope as well from the Minnesota Twins. In 2019, he had a good year, 256 batting average, a 304 on base, a 473 slugging with a 77 OPS with 23 home runs, 59 RBIs. and he was a 1.6 win player. That's solid numbers. He was an All-Star in 2017. 2017 was like a phenomenal year for Jonathan Schoop. To be your starting second baseman, to put up 23 home runs, averaging around probably, I'd say around, averaging around 25 to 27 home runs for his career. That's what you want out of your second baseman. He defensively, he's a good defensive player. Over his career, he has 44 defensive runs saved, which is absolutely phenomenal. He had some great years in Baltimore. Then he got moved to Minnesota. He had some okay years in Minnesota. 2 years in Minnesota, they weren't great, but he already has 7 years of experience in the league, but only entering his age 28 season. He's entering his prime. He's probably going to progress just a little more. He's going to become. Right now he's an above average second baseman. I don't know if he hits that upper echelon tier. I don't think he does. But since it's his first action as well with the Tigers in 2020 spring training, he had 29 plate appearances. He had 1 home run, 4 RBIs. He had 241 with a 241 on base as well. 379 slugging and a 621 OPS. What they project him, what his projections through April 24th are a 196 batting average, a 235 on base, a 293 slugging, and a 528 OPS. The Tigers better hope he doesn't hit that because that is abysmal. I think he hovers around a 250, 260 batting average. I think his power numbers might get reduced a little bit. I know he was hitting in Target Field, and that is not a hitter-friendly ballpark in the slightest. Comerica is probably a more hitter-friendly ballpark, so maybe he hovers around 25 home runs. RBIs, I do project to go up. Maybe not. I take that back, actually. You know why I take that back? Because I don't know who is getting on base for him to drive in. In Minnesota, you had guys like Mitch Garver, Max Kepler, Byron Buxton, guys like that to get on base for Jonathan Schoop to drive them in. You don't have that here in Detroit, so maybe his averages go up, but his RBI production goes down a little bit. I think solo home runs for him goes up a little bit just because nobody will be on base for him to score, to drive in when he hits those home runs. That's just my personal opinion. But let's go to their next signing, which is Cameron Maybin, another New York Yankee that they brought in. Cameron Maybin in 2019 had a hit for 285, a 364 on base, a 494 slugging, and 858 OPS with 11 home runs, 32 RBIs in 239 plate appearances. This Cameron Maybin was not the Yankees every day, either left or right fielder. But that's a very productive year for Cameron Maybin. He's entering his age 33 season. Been in the league for a while now. 13 years in the league. Probably one of his better seasons with New York in overall in his career. I think New York, he really rejuvenated his career because he had a rough year in Seattle in 2018, a rough year in Miami in 2018. In 2017, a rough year with Angels in Houston. He's moved around a lot over the past couple of years. He had a home. He started off in Detroit, then went to the Florida Marlins before they were the Miami Marlins, then found those 4 years in San Diego. And then after those 4 years in San Diego, he went from Atlanta, Detroit, Angels, Houston, back to the Miami Marlins, Seattle Mariners, the New York Yankees, and then back to the Detroit Tigers. He's been a journeyman. He's played for a bunch of teams in both leagues, National and American League. But he had a very productive, watching him, I do happen to watch a couple Yankee games here and there. Watching him in 2019, he looked productive in the plate appearances he got. There were times, he's not that exceptional defender. You're not really going to get that out of him. As he's aging, his defenses went down. Now he's a -7 defensive runs saved over the course of his career. He doesn't have that defense. He's definitely not the offensive powerhouse that he could have been earlier in his career, but he is a serviceable outfielder that will definitely be the day one starter out there in Detroit. I don't see how he wouldn't be. He's played in Detroit before. He remembers Comerica Park. How do you not? That park is very memorable. So, yeah, it's going to boost up their offense in general and their defense because Cameron Maybin is telling you a better defender than who they had out there last year. So that is going to be all the moves actually to talk about that they did. We're going to go through their 2020 depth chart. So I want to go over this quickly because I do want to tell you that I want to show you how they got better. Their rotation is Matthew Boyd, Jordan Zimmerman, Spencer Turnbull, Ivan Nova, and Daniel Norris. Michael Fulmer probably jumps in for Turnbull if he's healthy. If not, Turnbull's going to stay there. But if you look at, let's say Michael Fulmer does jump in, you have two pitchers who are dominant in the roughs in Matthew Boyd and Michael Fulmer. You have a serviceable pitcher in Jordan Zimmerman. You have Ivan Nova, who pitched well last year, and you have Daniel Norris, who could be serviceable as well. I actually like Spencer Turnbull. I think that he shouldn't be pulled out of the rotation if Michael Fulmer were. I think maybe Ivan Nova or Jordan Zimmerman should. But I'm not the GM or the manager. But yeah, it's an okay. It's a bottom half of the league rotation. It's definitely better than, if everybody can perform to where they know they can, it could be a good rotation. But it's definitely not a top 15, top 16 rotation in the league. Bullpen, your closer, Joe Jimenez, who is actually very, very solid. I actually do like him. He doesn't get many opportunities to close a bunch of games because he plays for the Detroit Tigers. But in his limited work of 59 2/3 innings pitched, he struck out 82 batters to a 4.37 ERA. 9 saves only because, once again, how many games can he possibly save when you're not winning many games? You have Buck Farmer, Gregory Soto, Jose Cisnero, Brian Garcia, Ronny Garcia, David McKay, and Alex Wilson. Boy, is this bullpen, yearning for something. I don't know what it is, but they are definitely yearning for really anything at this point. And they just didn't get it in the offseason. And this bullpen is definitely a bottom 10 bullpen in the league. It's just as simple as that. You lost like a guy like Shane Green, who was your closer, and then you lost him because you traded him to Atlanta for absolutely nothing. I don't get why you did that, but I don't know. This bullpen's not good. Catcher, you got the newly acquired Austin Romine with Grayson Griner and Eric Haas backing him up. Again, serviceable catcher. I told you Austin Romine's going to slide in to be that opening day starter. First baseman, you have CJ Cron. He was another acquired guy that they picked up this offseason. I didn't talk about him because it's not a big deal. But he will slide in to be their opening day first baseman because Miguel Cabrera, I don't think, will be their first baseman anymore. I think he will start at DH and stay at DH for the rest of his career, however long that lasts. Second baseman, you have Jonathan Scope, the guy we talked about. Definitely going to slide in and be your starting second baseman with Harold Castro and Jordy Mercer backing him up. At third base, you have Jeimer Candelario. He's okay. He's trying to fill in the shoes of like filling in for Nicholas Castellanos, which is hard to do because he's not Nicholas Castellanos, and he just probably will never get to that level or capability. But in 2019, abysmal average 203, 8 home runs, 32 RBIs, and 335 plate appearances. Again, but I can read you stats from Tiger players all day, but none of them played well in 2019. I think they have more potential than that, but I don't know how much more. Your starting shortstop is Nico Goodrum. This is the other guy I said that had the possibility of being the Tigers' breakout player, him or Jacoby Jones. In 2019, he hit 248 with 12 home runs, 45 RBIs. Again, not great, but once again, it's the Tigers. You can only go up from here. Nico Goodrum's your starting shortstop. Left field, you have Christian Stewart. Center field, you have Jacoby Jones. And right field, you have Cameron Maybin sliding in and taking over probably who, if you didn't have Cameron Maybin, Victor Reyes probably gets that start there, but Cameron Maybin will be the starting right fielder. And designated hitter is one of the most respected players in the whole league, Miguel Cabrera, in my opinion, a Hall of Famer, but people have different opinions. I personally believe Miguel Cabrera is a Hall of Famer. So that is everything the Detroit Tigers did in 2020 offseason. My projection for them is actually a 13-win 13-win increase. I have them going 60-102. Right? So that is an increase, but they're still 42 games below 500. This can't be stressed enough. They're not there, and they won't be there for a while. I'm giving their offseason a D- or a C+. Yeah, they made a couple additions, but these additions, they're going to start for them, and they're going to be their opening day starters. Some of these, Cameron Maybin would not be an opening day starter on a winning team. He would be a bench piece and a very serviceable one at that. Same with Austin Romine. He wouldn't be an opening day catcher, but he would be another serviceable bench piece. Jonathan Scope would probably be an opening day second baseman. on a winning team. But I think I would lean towards the C plus because they did make additions to their opening day roster. But man, it's tough. They didn't address that awful bullpen. Their starting pitching is really decent at best, and their lineup just doesn't have any pop to it. You know, I fear that this lineup over the course of a season will lack consistency, because they don't have a lot of players who hit for really high averages. You have players who hit for below 250 average. Like almost all their players hit for below 250. So they're gonna lack consistency of getting on base. If you can't get on base, you can't score runs. You know, the Moneyball like notion that if he gets on base, you can score runs. You know, it doesn't matter if he's not a power hitter, but if he gets on base, getting on base equals runs. If you don't get on base, you can't equal runs. And when your pitching staff is giving up upwards of 4 runs a game, you have to score 5 to win. And you can't score 5 without getting on base. So I don't know if they did enough. They definitely did not do enough in the 2020 offseason. I like the moves they made, but they needed to make 50 more. You know, they needed to make a lot more. So they didn't go out there and make a huge splash. But I don't think anyone would really want to come to Detroit at this point until they get better. But I do have them going 60-102. Probably still last in the AL Central unless the Royals really just really screw up. But I don't see that happening. I think Royals, yeah, they're going to be below 500, but not 42 games below 500. So that's my take on the Detroit Tigers and what they did in 2020 offseason. I thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. I am officially on Spotify. The link will be in the description down below. I'm working on getting onto Apple Podcasts, on Google Play Podcast, and all the other sites, iHeartRadio. But I'm officially on Spotify, so I would appreciate if you guys can go out there, follow my podcast page, and just listen to the podcast on there if you could, or if you like the YouTube format, whatever's easier for you. So once again, thank you guys for taking time out of your day. All feedback is appreciated, and trust me, it really is appreciated and welcome because I read every comment. I take it to heart if it's good or if it's bad, because good is great and bad is constructive to me. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you on the next one.